Hello and welcome to Lighting 101 presented by Phil Weinholtz and ATX Event Systems. We're going to first talk by going through the common types of lighting. First is a stage wash. The stage wash is designed for the simple utility of providing illumination on a stage where your presenter or presenters are going to be. This is usually done from the front, and it's critical for cameras, but it also serves the very basic utility of providing focus on the presenters from your audience during the presentation. Scenic lighting is designed to illuminate a very specific piece of scenery or activation. A good example of this is during a product reveal or a car reveal where you just have the stage lit and then you transition to having the product or the car or whatever it is you're trying to light up. Uplighting. Uplighting is lighting usually placed around the perimeter of a room or drape line to increase ambiance. House lighting. House lighting traditionally refers to the in-house lighting system used to provide visibility while the audience is entering and exiting the space. This is usually already something installed in the venue or already in the ballroom that we're going to be working. Various levels of control are available to house light depending on the venue. Backlight. Backlight is also referred to as wrap or hair light. This lighting is behind the presenter and helps separate them from any drape that's behind them. This is really important for camera. A lot of times you'll have a presenter on stage in a black suit and we'll have black drape behind them. And when the camera's doing that front shot, if you don't have any backlight, you might just see a floating head. Every televised production you've seen has always made use of backlight to separate their subject from the background. Moving lighting is the last thing we'll be talking about, and it's lighting that moves and creates big dramatic sweeps of the audience or can create ambiance just in the air above the audience. It's really awesome, but it also can eat up all of your budget. Here's the different types of lighting fixtures. Incandescent fixtures. These have been the workhorse for the past 40, 50 years in our industry, so they're commonly owned by just about everyone. They are cheap to rent, but there are some pretty significant drawbacks. They're very hot. The color is static, which means that this frame you see in the front of the fixture, what we decide color-wise we're going to put in there is going to be there the entire time and will not change. They require external control in the form of dimmers. They are also very inefficient on power. Common uses for these are the stage wash, for scenic lighting, for gobos, and for backlight. Now the Licos, these more tube-like fixtures you see here, are what is used to project gobos and stuff like that. So you can have your company's logo or your client's logo or something like that projected on the wall, and that's where you see incandescent fixtures used a lot. What they are unsuitable for is uplight, or if you have very tight area you need to fit the fixture into, because of their heat and the power usage that makes them unsuitable for these. These are static LED fixtures. The pros of these are that they're very power efficient, they're cool to the touch, variable color, which means we can change them to be whatever you want during the show. So say you have a client that walks on stage and his color is green, and then the next person who goes on, they can be blue, and they can be synchronized to each presenter as they go on, or they can do all sorts of different things in coordination with video or other visual elements you want to present. The drawbacks are these are generally more expensive because they are new fixtures. They also require a modern console, whereas with incandescent fixtures, you could get away with a little less, much more simple consoles. All right, now moving head fixtures. This is the most expensive category of lighting because it is also the most high impact and most complicated aspect of lighting. These will absolutely require a modern lighting console and programming time. So here's a few different types that we commonly see. Moving head wash fixtures. Common uses for moving head wash fixtures include the stage wash or for backlight. A great reason to use a moving head wash fixture over an incandescent fixture for stage wash and backlight comes down to load-in time and also how big your stage is, also how reliable your presenters are and stuff like that. If you have a guy that doesn't even want to be on the stage, he wants to be over here or over there, and you're not quite sure where this guy's going to be, moving head washes are great for that, because during the show, without the audience being interfered with, you can swing your fixture over to pick up someone that's all the way on the left, all the way on the right, or wherever they are in the audience, if you give us pre-programming time to find these things. Another good example is if you don't have a lot of time. So when you build with an incandescent rig, you hang the fixtures, you power the fixtures, and then you fly the fixtures. Once they're up in the air, then the stage is set. Then you have to go through in the air with a scissor lift and focus each fixture individually into the spot it's going to go. Now, if someone changes their mind between when they've communicated to us what the lighting focus needs to be versus the showtime, it can create some shadows for cameras. Now where a moving head wash would excel in that scenario is a moving head wash would be great for, now you don't have to have the tables and chairs out of the way. Once that lighting truss flies and we can confirm those fixtures are working, you can have them set up tables and chairs directly underneath us to save as much time as possible for your show. These are unsuitable for gobos, and they don't really do too many beams in the air. Where you do beams is with the moving head beam fixtures. So right here is the Platinum 5R Beam Extreme, which ATX owns. And these things are really great for creating special effects over the audience's head, doing crowd sweeps, but what they're not great for is stage washes. For a stage wash, you want a fixture that has kind of a wide angle that has very even spread across it. Trying to build a stage wash out of tiny little beams is not a good idea. One thing to note is that these will require haze to reach their maximum potential in impact. Moving head profile fixtures. Okay, these ones are awesome. They do everything. They can do gobos, they can zoom, they can do a wash, they can do every single thing you need to do. However, as a result, they're the most expensive. They can also do custom gobos as well. So when you have a client that wants their gobo to fly around the room and do all sorts of stuff like that and change colors and size, then you're going to be getting a custom gobo for a moving light. They are more expensive than incandescent fixtures because it gets much hotter and they're much smaller and they have to be more resistant to certain things than an incandescent gobo needs to be. That's just something to keep in mind. Also, because these things can do everything, a lot of people tend to get wild with their demands on what we're going to do with them. And that's fine as long as there's enough time to implement all the looks that they want with them. Next, we're going to talk about lighting control. Here's our lighting console. This is the Roadhog 4 that we have with ATX Event Systems. And here's some common effects and cues that you can put into your run of show as you're trying to get your client to think about lighting and as you're trying to communicate to your lighting designer. So there's always going to be a walk-in look and a walk-out look. There's going to be presenters coming on stage, generally a video look, an audience sweep if you have a bunch of moving lights, and then a color change. If you use these terminology in your run of show, it's going to work great from the beginning of when you're developing your script to the end of it, and also to communicate to your lighting designer. If you say any of these things to a lighting designer, they'll know generally what you're looking for. There's also common effects that you can do. So ballyhoos, when you have your movers moving throughout the audience, strobes, where you get that intense blinking. Chase means the fixtures dim on and off in a sequential way. You can have it set to the beat of music or anything like that. A color chase means that the light's colors change in a specific way, in a repeating way, just like these other effects. Dimmers. We talked about dimmers needing to go with incandescent fixtures. So incandescent fixtures don't have any control on board. They're just very simple resistance circuits. And as a result, you have to have external dimming with them. So dimmers can go from very small, like we see here on the left, to very large, like we see here on the right. The one on the right is not to scale. The one on the right is probably about 3 feet tall, very heavy, and can move tons and tons of power. Conversely, there are also power distribution, or distros. Distros also range in size, but the smallest one you're going to find is usually around 50 amp three-phase, and they typically range from 100 amp all the way up to 400 amp three-phase. Distros, you can see multiple distros on the same quote, one for audio, one for lighting, one for video sometimes. Sometimes it can be all combined, but where distros differ from dimmers is that dimmers can only ever be used for lighting. Hazers and foggers each work by applying heat to specific chemicals to form some type of atmospheric effect. For hazers, it's a thin, breathable atmospheric effect, and for foggers, it's a directional cloud. 99% of hotels and venues will require disabling their fire detector systems and bringing in a fire watch. A fire watch is a fire marshal or someone similar that is required to be in the room anytime the atmospherics are going on. A hazer will emit very fine particles that hang in the air and are very much less noticeable. They're great for seeing beams over an entire venue because they have a wide effect, but it's a very light effect without lights going through them. Foggers, on the other hand, are these big directional clouds. So where you would use a hazer is if you're going to put on like a laser show or use beams shooting over the audience or anything like that where you really want to call attention to this lighting that's going to transform the air above. Whereas a fogger, what you would use it for is very specific moments. So before your show even starts, you would start your hazer. Whereas your fogger you would use for a very specific moment. Like say you have a CEO that you know wants a really big entrance. You would shoot off these foggers behind him, let him walk through the smoke, and it'd be this really cool moment. Why bother with atmospherics? If you're gonna invest all the money into moving lights, it's really not that much more to get haze to really enhance the show. Whereas if you're using all these fixtures without haze, you have to use them on scenic stuff or to throw patterns around to really maximize your impact for your budget. One of the most common questions I have with atmospherics is, well, we don't want it to look like a smoky bar. With hazers, it won't look like a smoky bar. It's also safe to breathe. I spent the last 5 years of my career working in 18 hours a day, hazy environments using water-based hazers. I also have asthma, and the fact that I did not have any issues over those 5 years speaks to me about how safe they are as well. All right, uncommon situations. Lasers. Lasers carry a liability over a certain wattage. Always make sure that your laser operator has paperwork and their license for each laser and for themselves. Lasers may not be used outside without special permission due to the FAA because lasers don't have a drop-off. They can just go and go and go until they hit a plane cockpit or a helicopter cockpit or something like that. Lasers without atmospherics are almost completely useless. So if someone says they want a laser show but they don't have enough money to pay for Firewatch, I would urge you to spend that money elsewhere. Lasers also require a completely separate set of operators and control signal from your lighting teams when it comes to corporate events because the control signal we use for lighting doesn't have the same level of safety protocol that the control signal for lasers are required to have. Strobes. Strobes have a huge impact, but most LEDs and moving headlights can do a strobe effect. And a strobe can only ever strobe. So every time you turn that light on, that strobe on that you're specifically paying for, it's only ever going to be that blinking light. You can't just use it as an uplight or to throw a light on scenery or anything like that. Whereas with a moving headlight, you can use it to light scenery, you can use it to light the stage, you can use it as backlight, and then when you want those strobes, you put that into the strobe mode. Also, in my experience, there are way more performers that will say absolutely no strobes versus ones that will say we must have strobes. Frequently asked questions. Wow, it's bright up here. Can we turn that down? The human eye is super adaptable to all sorts of different lighting situations. The cameras are not. They are very fixed in what they will accept lighting-wise, So a lot of times we do have to hit the stage with what feels like an uncomfortable amount of light. There's ways around that though. Can you make silver or brown light? The color mixing system for most print media is very different than the lighting system. So without the key from the color mixing system for print media, it is impossible in lighting to create gray, black, brown, or silver. Most of those colors, if you think about them, so gray is white mixed with black. We don't have a black on the console, so you just get dimmer white. Brown is black mixed with red, so you just get dimmer red. Can I call you with a lighting question? Absolutely. I love to talk about lighting, and my email will be in here. What's the bare minimum I need? That all really depends on what you're doing. If you just have a really small acoustic performance that's outside of a venue, you can get away with a very small amount of lighting. However, if you're doing a TED Talk or like a Netflix taping, you really need to spend more money, and obviously your budget should scale as well to bring in proper lighting for cameras, especially when you have cameras from multiple angles. Can't my video guy or audio guy just run lights too? This again depends on what you're doing. If you just have one very simple cue where you just need basic utility of seeing the people, just lights up, leave them up the whole session, sure. But if you have moving lights, if you have color changes, if you have video looks, if you have effects, that's when you're going to be required, or you're really going to want to have a lighting designer on site. Thank you very much. My name is Phil Weinholtz. This is my email. Please feel free to hit me up with any questions.